She grabbed my hair in front of everyone and threw cake in my face like I was nothing. She had no idea I spent 2 years training in secret. That night I stopped being her maid and became the woman who taught her the most painful lesson of her life. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were beneath them, stay till the end because this story is for you. And if stories like mine speak to you, follow this channel now. Every story here proves one thing: never judge a quiet woman too fast. Now let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Ianda. I grew up in a small house with thin walls and a big amount of love. I was the only child my parents ever had, and everything they earned, everything they had, they gave to me. We were not rich, we were not even close to comfortable, but we were happy in a way that money cannot always buy. When I was a little girl, I fell in love with something strange for a girl in my neighborhood. I fell in love with karate. I do not even remember how it started. Maybe it was a movie I watched on an old television with a cracked screen. Maybe it was the way the fighters moved, so calm, so controlled, like they knew something about life that nobody had taught me yet. Whatever it was, it grabbed my heart and never let go. I used to practice in our small backyard, throwing punches into the air, kicking at nothing, pretending I was one of those fighters on the screen. My mother would watch from the kitchen window and laugh softly, not because she thought it was silly, but because she loved seeing me happy. My father would sometimes come outside after a long day of work and stand next to me, trying to copy my moves, and we would both laugh until our stomachs hurt. I begged them for classes, real classes with a real teacher in a real dojo. My parents wanted to give me that. I could see it in their eyes every time I asked, but we did not have the money. Every dollar they earned went to rent, to food, to keeping the lights on. A karate class was a dream sitting on a shelf we could not reach, so the dream stayed a dream, and I told myself maybe someday. Years passed. I grew from a little girl into a young woman, and life, as it does, kept moving forward whether we were ready or not. My father worked hard every single day of his life. He never complained, not once, even when his body was tired and his hands were rough from years of labor. My mother took care of our home like it was a palace, even though it was small and simple. I loved them more than anything in this world. Then one day, everything changed in a single moment. My father collapsed at work. One second he was fine, and the next he was on the ground, and everyone around him was panicking. By the time we got to the hospital, the doctors told us his heart had been under stress for years, silently, quietly, without any of us knowing. He needed rest. He needed medicine. He needed time to heal. What he could not do anymore, at least not for a long while, was work. I remember sitting in that hospital hallway, staring at the white walls, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. My father, the strongest man I knew, was lying in a bed with tubes attached to his arm, and my mother was crying quietly beside me, trying to be strong for both of us. In that moment, I understood something clearly. If I did not step up, nobody was going to catch us. There was no safety net. There was only me. I started looking for work immediately. I wanted something respectable, something in an office, something that would make my parents proud and pay enough to cover the medicine and the bills. I applied everywhere. I dressed in my best clothes, the only nice outfit I owned, and I walked into offices with my head held high and my resume in my hand. But door after door closed on me. I did not have the right education. I did not have a degree. I did not have connections. All I had was determination, and in that world, determination alone was not enough. I cannot describe the feeling of being told no again and again, while your father's medical bills keep growing and your mother's eyes keep getting more tired. It humbles you in a way nothing else can. I remember walking home one evening after another rejection, and I made a decision. I would take any job. I would swallow whatever pride I had left, because pride does not pay hospital bills, but hard work does. That is how I found myself applying for a position as a live-in housekeeper in the home of a very wealthy man. People around here called him a billionaire, and honestly, when I first walked up to that house, I understood why. It looked less like a home and more like something from a magazine: tall gates, endless gardens, more rooms than I could count. I stood outside that gate feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my life, but I reminded myself why I was there. This was not about pride. This was about my family. I got the job. I still remember the relief that flooded through me when they called and told me I was hired. I cried that night, not from sadness, but from a strange mix of relief and fear. I was about to start a new chapter, one I never imagined for myself, but one that would keep a roof over my parents' heads. 2 years passed after that day. 2 years of waking up before sunrise, cleaning floors that were already spotless, ironing clothes worth more than my monthly salary, and serving meals I would never be invited to eat. I learned to move quietly through that house, to be present but unseen, to speak only when spoken to. It was not the life I dreamed of as a little girl throwing punches in my backyard, but it was a life that kept my family alive, and for that I was grateful. What nobody in that house knew What I never told a single soul there was that I had not let go of my old dream. On my one day off each week, I would take a portion of my small salary, money I could barely spare, and I would go to a modest karate school across town. It was nothing fancy, just a simple room with mats on the floor and a teacher who believed that anyone willing to work hard deserved a chance to learn. I trained there in secret for those 2 years, throwing the same punches I once threw into empty air, except now someone was teaching me how to make them mean something. Nobody at the big house ever saw that side of me. To them, I was simply the maid. Quiet, polite, invisible. They never asked about my life outside those walls, and I never offered to share it. It was my secret, my one piece of joy in a life that otherwise revolved around other people's comfort. Every bruise on my knuckles, every ache in my legs after training was a reminder that somewhere inside me, that little girl who loved karate was still alive. I supported my parents fully during those years. My father slowly recovered, though he was never quite the same. My mother grew a little more tired with each passing season, though she never once complained about the sacrifices I was making. Life was hard, but it was ours, and I found a strange kind of pride in carrying that weight. I was not living the life I once dreamed of, but I was keeping my family together, and that mattered more than any dream. Then came the day that changed everything. The man I worked for announced his engagement. The house buzzed with excitement for weeks. Decorators came in and out, florists filled every room with the smell of fresh blooms, and the staff worked longer hours than ever preparing for the big celebration. I did not think much of it at first. Another event, another long day of work, another night of aching feet. I had no idea that this particular evening would become the turning point of my entire life. His fiancée was beautiful, I will admit that. She walked into every room like she owned the air itself. But there was something cold behind her eyes, something that made the staff nervous whenever she was near. From the very first time she saw me, I could feel her judging me, sizing me up, deciding in an instant that I was beneath her. She never bothered to learn my name. To her, I was simply the help, a piece of furniture that happened to move and clean. On the night of the engagement party, the house was full of guests, laughter, music, and the clinking of expensive glasses. I moved through the crowd carrying trays, refilling drinks, keeping my head down and my hands steady. I had done this 100 times before. I knew how to disappear into the background while still doing my job perfectly. But that night, for reasons I still do not fully understand, she decided I would be her entertainment. It started small. She snapped her fingers at me across the room, demanding I bring her something even though there were other staff closer to her. She made comments about my uniform, my hair, the way I walked, loud enough for nearby guests to hear and laugh along nervously. I stayed calm. I told myself this was just one night, one difficult night, and tomorrow it would be over. I thought about my parents, about the bills, about everything I had sacrificed to keep this job, and I swallowed every insult like I had learned to do for 2 long years. But she was not finished. As the night went on, she seemed to enjoy my silence, mistaking it for weakness rather than strength. She followed me toward the kitchen doorway, in front of a small group of guests who had wandered close enough to watch, and she said something cruel about people like me, people who exist only to serve people like her. I did not respond. I kept my eyes down and continued walking, and that is when she reached out and grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head back hard enough that I gasped out loud. The room around us went quiet. I could hear gasps, whispers, the sound of glasses being set down slowly on tables. She held onto my hair for a moment longer, clearly enjoying the power she felt in that instant, before letting go with a laugh that echoed through the room. Then, as if that was not enough, she reached over to the beautifully decorated engagement cake sitting nearby and grabbed a handful, smearing it across my face while her friends laughed around her. I stood there for a moment, cake dripping down my cheek, my scalp still burning from where she had pulled my hair, and something inside me finally broke. 2 years of silence, 2 years of swallowing insults, 2 years of being invisible while carrying the weight of my entire family on my shoulders. All of it rose up inside me at once, and in that instant, I was no longer thinking about my job or my paycheck or what people would think. My body simply reacted the way 2 years of quiet training had taught it to react. I do not remember deciding to move. My training took over before my mind caught up. My fist moved first, a sharp, controlled punch that connected before she even realized what was happening. Then, without pause, my leg followed, a kick thrown with everything I had, everything 2 years of secret practice had built inside me, landing clean and hard. The room fell into complete silence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Every guest, every member of the staff, and the billionaire himself stood frozen, staring at the scene in front of them, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The woman who had mocked me, humiliated me, laughed at me in front of a room full of strangers, was now sitting on the floor, stunned, her carefully done makeup smudged, her confidence shattered in seconds. I stood over her, breathing hard, cake still on my face, and for the first time in 2 years, I spoke without lowering my eyes. I told her that she had spent the whole night treating me like I was nothing, like I did not have a name, like I did not have a life outside of serving her and her guests. I told her that she would never know the sacrifices I had made, the family I was carrying on my back, the dream I had quietly kept alive while she assumed I had none. I told her that respect is something you give to everyone, not just the people you think matter, and tonight she had learned that lesson the hard way. Nobody in that room said a word. The billionaire, the man I had served for 2 years, looked at me not with anger, but with something closer to shock and quiet understanding. He had never known the woman he was about to marry could behave this way. He had never known the maid in his house had a fire burning inside her that could not be put out forever. I did not wait for anyone to tell me what to do next. I reached up, untied the apron from around my waist, folded it carefully, and set it down on a nearby table. I looked around the room one last time, at the guests staring in silence, at the fiancé still sitting on the floor, at the life I was leaving behind in that very moment, and I walked out through the front doors without looking back. Word about that night spread faster than I could have imagined. Somehow, the story reached the small karate school where I had trained in secret for 2 years. My teacher, the man who had believed in me when I had nothing to offer but effort and determination, heard what happened and reached out to me personally. He told me he had a position open, a real position, teaching students at his school, something I never imagined could actually become my career. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. I went home that night still smelling faintly of frosting, my scalp still sore, but my heart lighter than it had been in years. I sat my parents down and told them everything, from the humiliation to the moment I finally stood up for myself, to the job offer waiting for me. My mother cried. My father, still not fully recovered but strong enough to hold me tight, told me he had never been prouder of me in his entire life. That night, for the first time in a long time, our small house felt full of hope instead of worry. I think about that night often. Not the humiliation, not the cake dripping down my face, not even the punch or the kick that changed everything. I think about the years before that night, the years of quiet sacrifice, the years of holding my head high while carrying more than anyone around me realized. I think about the little girl in the backyard, throwing punches into empty air, dreaming of a future she could not yet see. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this: you never know what someone is carrying behind their silence. You never know what strength is hiding behind someone's quiet patience. I was underestimated because I chose to stay humble, because I chose to keep my head down and do my job. But humility is not weakness, and patience is not permission to be disrespected forever. Sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones who have been building their strength the longest, waiting for the moment they finally need to use it. I am not that maid anymore. I am a teacher now, passing down everything I learned to young students who remind me of myself, standing in a backyard, dreaming of something bigger. I still support my parents, but now I do it with a career I am proud of, one I fought for in silence and finally claimed out loud. My father is healthier now, my mother worries a little less. And I finally get to live the dream I once thought was locked away forever behind a closed door and an empty wallet. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments one word that describes your own hidden strength. Share this with someone who has been underestimated, someone who needs to hear that their quiet patience is not weakness. And if you want more stories like mine, subscribe to this channel, because next week, another quiet woman refuses to stay silent, and you will not want to miss her story either.